Referee for this afternoon from France, Monsieur Marc Desclaux, and it's Munster to get the game underway. Dan Larkin, the outside half, who's played most of his club rugby at full-back, reverting to his international schools position to start this game. 80 minutes of no doubt pulsating rugby ahead. The pitch in pretty good condition, and the wind and the rain, which threatened to envelop Cork early this morning, have died away. The French referee just taking his time and has asked David Nucifora, the captain of the Australians today, if he's ready. He says yes. And Munster against Australia, 1992 underway. That's taken straight away by Mike Braille, the flank forward. Australians just outside their 22. And for the opening exchanges, I'm quite sure this big, strong Australian pack will try to take on their Munster opposite numbers. So the Australians failing to get the ball away from the initial possession, and that means the put into the scrummage is going to go to Munster. Interesting for the home side, they've got Paul McCarthy, who won 2 caps for Ireland in New Zealand in the tests. On the tight head side, is playing on the near side of the scrum, the loose head. Good strike by Kingston. Cronin controls. That's Larkin. Jack Clark came infield. That's a bit speculative and a bit long. And Tim Kelleher will dot that down for a 22 to the Wallabies. Anthony Herbert, that's Jack Clark, capped 6 times by Ireland. Also plays his rugby in the centre. Restart by the Wallabies, that's well taken by them. That's the huge Lily Crap driving forward, the loose head prop. Eckert, that's Herbert. It's Damien Smith, he's got a lot of pace, big leggy youngster. Well, he's made a lot of ground, well laid back by Australia. That's Herbert. He did have men outside him. Darren Juney was looking ominous. Down to Charlie Haley, and he hasn't found touch. This is Garrick Morgan on the charge. And a fine piece of covering tackling by Munster. But Australia already showing that these big fellas, Fergus, can really run.
Yeah, it's an interesting exercise for the Australians. It's being very much their second team side, and great test for them here. Almost ideal Munster conditions here with a lot of rain falling on Cork today.
At the back for Munster, Ger Earls, a late replacement for Pat O'Hara. That's Terry Kingston, the Munster skipper. It's well taken in the middle by Munster, nicely tidied. Larkin. And he's got that away, well done, Larkin. So good opening line out for the Munster men. And Dan Larkin took that coolly and kicked positively. Back for Australia, Sam Scott Young. That's Warwick Waugh at the front of the line-out. But the Australians have been penalised. In fact, the Munster team have been penalised. It's a free to the Wallabies. There's the tap. That's Crowley, who played against Leinster last Saturday as a replacement. Oh, that's Troy Coker. Mind you, he's really huge. He's got support from Waugh. Australian scrum half. Pulled in, and a penalty, and the chance for the first points, and the weather's starting to improve, the sun's starting to shine, and that will encourage the Australians, and this is not the start that Munster would have wished for.
No, but it's been a first-class start by the Australians. They've shown a lot of confidence there, taking that penalty opportunity and deciding to run, using their big forwards, and particularly Coker there punched a big hole in the middle of the Munster defence. Certainly the Australians are very composed and have not been put back by the reputation of Munster and their general attitude to touring sides.
As this kick is about to be taken, the Australian prop, Dan Crowley, has come off. There's a bit of blood coming from his head, but in the meantime, it's Tim Kelleher for his first points of the tour. A bit of ill-natured booing. And as the sun really comes out, Tim Kelleher puts the Australians 3 points ahead, and we've just got 5 minutes on the
Penalty
board.
goal for Australia, kicked by fullback Tim Kelleher. And the Munster branch and the Rugby Union would appeal to the people in the
Good
ground.
start by Kelleher. There was the incident again. Troy Coker, it was, the big number 8 who's played his club rugby for both Oxford University and the Harlequins, really driving forward, and Munster men under all sorts of pressure, giving away the penalty. Restart by Larkin, that hasn't gone 10 metres. The Australians, led by David Nusiforo, the hooker, opting for the scrummage back in the centre of the field. And there's Dan Crowley, who came on as a replacement for the unfortunate Tony Daly last Saturday. Daly will take no further part in this tour. Alas for him, he's got severe disc trouble in his back. And the referee is coming over to have a look at this chunky little man, Dan Crowley, who can play on either side of the front row. Played in all 3 tests against the British Lions in 1989.
I think if one was to speculate on the outcome of the game, notwithstanding the fact that this is the Australian second string side, it is on Munster standards a fairly poor Munster side, and I don't think they're going to be able to maintain the very fine tradition they've had against touring sides, and I think it could very quickly become a one-sided affair.
Well, 3-0 then to the tourists. Dan Crowley takes his place back in the front row. A little bit of a problem on the far side between Lillicrap and the Munster tight head, Peter Closey. That's Coker. Got support from Scott Young. Beautifully done by the Wallabies. This is Kelleher. Smith outside him. Has he put that directly into touch, or has it bounced beautifully? It's bounced beautifully. Well, that really was a kick of pinpoint accuracy, Fergus.
Just 5 metres from the Munster line, and Australia did the right thing there. They were cut out. They had no other option but to kick it into the corner. A beautiful kick.
Kingston takes it quickly. Tap back by Cronin, has gone loose. And Jack Clark comes scampering through, and the Wallabies are penalised at the line out. And this will give Munster a little bit of a breather. They can come right out to 15 metres. There's an injury to a Munster player, and it looks like Peter Closey, the tight head prop forward, a fairly uncompromising gentleman. Peter Closey plays his club rugby in Limerick for the young Munster side. An ankle injury he seems to have sustained. Now, should he go off, it would mean that the Irish international John Fitzgerald would come on for the same club, and Paul McCarthy would probably move over. But Closey seems to be fine. And the ball put nicely into touch by Dan Larkin. Terry Kingston, the Munster skipper. Australia with really big men. Warwick Ward jumping at 2, and Garrick Morgan at 4. And Coker at the back, all in the region of 6'5" or 6'6". If they maintain that gap. Well taken at the front by Mick Galway. That's great traditional Munster fire and drive. Well, there's a bit of a punch-up has broken out between 1 or 2 people, between Crowley and Kingston, and that really is very nasty. This is all totally unnecessary. There's Troy Coker and the smallest man on the Munster side, the scrum half, Derek Tobin, having a go at each other. And this French referee, Monsieur Declout, is going to have to take the game very much in hand. We didn't get anything like that at all last Saturday in the game at Lansdowne Road between Leinster and the Australians, and we could well do without that.
I just think the origins of that may have emanated from a little bit of stamping by 1 or 2 of the Munster players, and a reaction from, like I say, 1 or 2 of the Australian players.
Referee has penalised the Australians. That's Ger Closey, brother of Peter. You see the way the Munster men are going in with the feet. The Australians won't like that, and they're giving a little bit of their own back. Australia win that. That's Paul Cowell, and that's going to test Charlie Haley. And he's made a good job of that, Haley. This is the man who has taken over in the club Cork constitution from Kenny Murphy, former Irish fullback. Kenny Murphy is a replacement today, playing his club rugby now on the wing. So that fine kick by Paul Cow has given Australia the advantage territorially. And they've also got the throw in. Taken by Ger Clohessy, number 6 for Munster. Tobin, Larkin, onto the left foot, and a fine touch. Played his schools rugby at outside half, where he won several Irish caps, and then since then has moved mainly to fullback. Plays for the All-Ireland champions, Gary Owen. Again, that's well taken by the Australians. Look like they're trying to dig in, and the surface a little bit on the slippery side, but the ground, I think, has taken a long stud. That's great driving. Pop back awkwardly. That's Briel, the flank forward. Eckert waits. Munster penalised yet again, and a chance for another 3 points for the Australians. And Terry Kingston, the Munster hooker and skipper, is being taken to one side by the referee, and I think it's been told that if there's any more stamping, somebody is going to go off. And I don't think that's going to be a bad thing whatsoever, because Fergus, in the opening exchanges, there were a lot of studs going in.
Yes, I think that is, as I mentioned earlier, the reason for the reaction from the Australians. They didn't do it for no reason at all. The interesting thing about the Australians was it's the second match of their tour. It is, bar one player, it's the first game for all of these guys, and as happened on Saturday, the Australians in the first 20-25 minutes of the game were a little bit rusty. And there may be a few signs of that out here today, but they're certainly playing with a lot of confidence, and they're certainly taking the game to Munster.
This is Tim Kelleher, the 22-year-old from Randwick, New South Wales. That was only cap against New Zealand this summer when Marty Roebuck was injured. One penalty so far this afternoon. And this, if anything, just as easy. A little bit of hesitancy, but the touch judges put the flags up. So a second penalty goal of the afternoon for the Australian fullback Tim Kelleher, and the Wallabies now 6 points up.
6 points to nil.
A happy little mascot. The game is restarted now with a dropout as opposed to a place kick. It's a better kick by Larkin, tapped back by Costello. There's Philip Danaher, the Irish skipper, runs into a thundering tackle from the tough Briel. Munster have won that well. Tobin kicking for Clark. A nasty one for Australia to deal with. Well taken by the scrum half, Anthony Eckert. Junie goes to scrum half. Munster have stolen that. This is Tobin. And he's chipped that well. So a good fiery response by Munster.
Yes, but I'd be a little bit disappointed with the use of the ball there by the Munster scrum half, Derek Tobin. I think that his hoisted kick just wasn't deep enough, and the short kick there really didn't push them closer into the corner.
Derek Tobin from Young Munster plays a fairly forward-orientated club game week in, week out. Throw to the Australians. Nucifora, the captain. That's Mick Galway, the big man with the headband for Munster. Behind him, the bearded Costello. Ball not going straight, according to the referee. And the scrummage is going to go to Munster. Just a bit knocked forward, in fact. Good strike by Kingston. That's Cronin. He's got past one tackle. Earls couldn't hold. This is Tobin for Clark. And a little Australian hand just nudged that into touch. The Munster scrummage looks very solid, Fergus.
Yes, so be it, but they'll be a little bit disappointed to be trailing.
It's gone loose. It's Scott Young going forward. That looked like a high tackle. I don't think it was deliberate, you've got to say, but deliberate or not, it was dangerous. And Dan Larkin, the man on the receiving end of it, is flattened. And one hopes this game is not going to turn into anything too nasty. And I think Sam Scott Young has apologised. I don't think he meant to do that at all.
No, I think he took a lunge at his jersey to try and scrag him and catch him, but unfortunately he just clipped him around the neck, I think, and just given him a little bit of a knock.
Well, there it is again. Scott Young, he was a big man for a flank forward off very quickly. I don't think he actually made contact with the face of Dan Larkin. It looks like he caught him by the collar and maybe just wrenched the collar.
It may even have been when he hit the ground, his head hit the ground, and has just taken a bit of a knock on the back of the head. But it certainly wasn't a bad blow by any means.
So Larkin shaken. His skipper Philip Danaher, the man who captained Ireland towards the end of the Five Nations Championship last year and again on the tour to New Zealand, helping his Gary Owen clubmate to his feet. There's a view from behind the post. No, he did actually just catch him by the jersey and he swung him round, and any damage would have been caused by him thumping the ground, as Fergus Slattery quite rightly said. But that's a little bit unfortunate because Dan Larkin is going off the field and a replacement hasn't been brought on yet. But it could well be Kenny Murphy from Constitution, or it could be Jim Galvin from Shannon. In the meantime, the penalty has been given and a chance for Munster to get 3 of those 6 Australian points back. Been a scrappy start, 16 minutes gone, 6-0 to the Wallabies. And this is Charlie Haley. Glance at the post. It's not a particularly difficult kick. Just outside the 22. Good contact. Stabbed it. Oh, that's nicely done. And Munster score their first points against the tourists. And 16 and a half minutes gone. And it's Australia 6 and Munster 3. And Dan Larkin, I'm glad to say, is back on the field again. Now the question is, Fergus, can Munster build on this?
Well, that's a vital 3 points for Munster, and it gets them on the scoreboard, and they certainly will need to try and get a few more points before half-time to stay in the game.
Paul McCarthy didn't make much of an effort to go for that. He took his eye off it. It's gone loose. Tobin, that's Larkin. It's taken by Damien Smith. He's the last man in the world you want to give a bit of room to, but the Australians were offside, and it'll be a penalty on the far side of the field. Terry Kingston having a word with his forwards, urging them to even greater heights, one hopes. Brian Walsh, the Cork Constitution centre, has found a very good touch. He'll be nicely pleased with that, Brian Walsh. Played his interprovincial rugby on the wing last year, on a swap with Jack Clark, who's moved from the centre out to the wing. Munster shorten it. Ben Cronin at the back, the number 8, in front of him Costello, then go away. Then McCarthy. Cronin, a rather agricultural tap. Clohessy is swallowed up by the huge Warwick wall. Well done, Munster. Larkin. That is a testing kick. Remember, there was one. And there's going to be another penalty. There's a lot of niggle in there, Fergus, which we don't really want to see.
Yes, well, I mean, Munster are going to play an untidy type of game by instinct, and they're going to be hoisting lots of high balls, so it's going to be very scraggy initially until the game settles. And obviously, the high balls, a bit of tension out there, and there has been a bit of niggling, and hence the number of penalties that have happened so far.
And Munster have been marched back to further 10 metres, and this will give Tim Kelleher, who's got all 6 of the Wallabies points, a chance for distance, and he gets it into touch. So coming up to the end of the first quarter, thanks to 2 penalties by this man Tim Kelleher, the Australians are leading Munster by 6 points to 3. Australia shorten it. It's Clohessy tidies. Tobin. Not a bad effort for an open side wing forward. Gerrards gets it into touch. What would you have done in that situation, Mr. Slattery?
Well, the important thing is to get your touch. As I say, when you get caught in a situation like that, it doesn't matter how far it goes as long as it goes in.
As Gerrards has come in for Irish international, Pat O'Hara, a late cry-off on the Munster side. And I think Terry Kingston is not very happy about Dan Larkin, who's come back on the field, and maybe worried about a possible concussion. Dan Larkin has very bravely come on, but does look a little shaken following that tackle by Sam Scott Young a few minutes ago. And a doctor is coming on, and I think the best thing that could be done for Dan Larkin, brave and all as he is, and much as he wants to be playing against the world champions, he should be going off the field. He's shaking his head saying, no, I don't want to go, but to be quite honest, I think that's the best thing. Jim Galvin warming up underneath. And Jim Galvin has been allowed to come on the field. He himself a late replacement on the Munster bench when Highfield's George O'Sullivan had to cry off a couple of days ago. So he's gone straight into the outside half position, and what a testing afternoon could be in front of him. Wonderfully well taken by Garrick Morgan for the Wallabies. They jump well, they take it two-handed, and most importantly they protect the ball. There was a lot of punching going in there. That was Mick Galway, and the touch judge on the far side has spotted that straight away and is not going to take any nonsense. Now let's see what transpires between the touch judge and the referee, because there was no doubt that Mick Galway, Irish international, was punching an Australian opponent. And I think Terry Kingston had been told that whoever did something else would go off. The referee is calling Mick Galway over. Now this would not be desperately good, because Mick Galway, there's a very distinct possibility that he might be in the Irish team to play the Australians on Saturday week. And if he does that again, he won't be playing any rugby for some time. So Mick Galway gets off with a caution, not the first Munster player to get that this afternoon. And this gives Tim Kelleher a chance for a third penalty goal from him.
Well, it's a reward for the Australians. It was a beautifully caught ball by Morgan, and then terrific support by Waugh, his colleague in the second, who got in and drove, and it's that sort of good play that's putting the pressure on Munster, and obviously maybe irritating one or two of their players.
Kelleher with two successful attempts at penalty goals so far this afternoon. And that's 3 out of 3, and that's very, very important to kick your goals. And the 6-point lead to the Australians has been restored, and with 22 minutes played. Right, a little bit restless. We've seen precious little running rugby this afternoon, but that was always going to be the case. Jim Galvin, the new outside half, restarts. Well taken by Warwick Waugh, but the Australians pushed backward. Munster boot put that through. That's a clever kick by Smith. Charlie Haley. And he finds a pretty good touch.
Again, it's the Australians are showing that Eckert and Cal, their halfbacks, are intent on punching that ball up into the short side once their options to move football are cut. So I think the Australians are playing a very positive game. They're being patient, and that's the way they should keep with it, keep the pressure on Munster.
The Australians turned round last Saturday, 2 points down against Leinster, and came back to win handsomely. Scott Young can't hold. That's Tobin. That's Galvin. There's the old Gary Owen. Back on the Munster side, great driving by the men in red. Tobin, it's Galvin. It's a little chip kick through for Clark to chase. Damien Smith has it. Clark has Smith. And that's good Munster rugby.
Well, it's a pity that the option wasn't used outside, because Halley was coming into the short side there, and he might have made the extra man and just given them a little bit more yardage with the ball in hand. But something positive has come out of it for Munster.
The penalty has been given against the Australian right wing three-quarter Damien Smith. He was bundled into touch by Jack Clark, and he refused to let the ball go. so that Munster could perhaps take a free or a quick throw in, and the penalty for that piece of misconduct by Damien Smith has been given, and so Munster have a decent chance now to just close the gap to 3 points again. And a little bit of sand. Charlie Haley from Cork Constitution plays his club rugby in this very city, not too far away at Temple Hill. Kicked the penalty after 16 minutes, and now with 25 minutes gone, has another shot at goal. Scoreboard saying that it's Munster 3 and Australia 9. But that could all change in a matter of 30 seconds or so. Charlie Haley. And he's just rushed that a little bit and pushed it to one side of the post. So as the sun comes out once again here at Musgrave Park in Cork, Australia still leading Munster by 9 points to 3. Still a lot of rugby to be played. 26 minutes gone. Kelleher, the full-back, taking the drop out. That's nicely done. Tap back. Whipped away by Eckert to Cal. Richard Wallace, of whom we've seen very little, in fact nothing at all so far this afternoon, the Irish international, finds a good touch. Richard Wallace, who scored a couple of tries in his first international season last year, one against Wales, one against Scotland, and toured New Zealand. Tobin, that's Galvin, nice miss move, that's Walsh, for Jack Clark to chase.
Again, Munster are having to kick that ball. Charlie Halley just wasn't able to get up there in time on that occasion. I think that Munster are showing their limitations of scoring. They're really depending on the Gary Owen to try and unsettle the Australians, and I don't think that's going to be quite enough here today.
There's the formidable figure of young Gareth Morgan. He's 22 years old. One of the Australian giants. Galway at the front, jumping at 2 for Munster. Well, I think a little bit of lifting went on there. A touch of suspended animation, but the ball was well won nevertheless. Eckert indicating to the referee that the ball's coming back. Kelleher standing at outside half. What a good kick from him. Yes, well, Jack Clark thought about taking it quickly, but changed his mind. That's Tim Kelleher. That's the Australian 10-metre line. Munster doing well at the line-out. Galvin looking for a gap. Half through. McCarthy, the prop, couldn't hold. Knocked forward by Munster. And put into the scrummage. And Dan Crowley, the Australian prop in the wars yet again. It's been a scrappy game, Fergus.
Yes, it has been. And I think until the game settles, it's going to take a little bit longer. As I said, this is the Australians. It's effectively, for most of them, their first game. And they're obviously just trying to take it easy, be patient, and not overextend themselves. They're here to win, and it's their first game of the tour. But I do think that, you know, in another 10 or 15 minutes, you'll see that the Australians, when they get a few more points on the board, that they'll start to play a more expansive game. In the meantime, it's going to probably remain just a little bit untidy.
So the available Dan Crowley seems to be fit and well. And typical Irish fashion, having had sun a couple of minutes ago, it's now got very dark and gloomy and looks like it's going to be a bit of rain, as Kelleher is well held. He's rolled over the right way. That's Gareth Morgan, who's absolutely enormous. And he's turned his body round. Let's see if that ball's going to be made available. There it is. That's Coker, that's Kelleher. This is Damien Smith, who's got a lot of pace. Well covered by little Derek Tobin, the Munster scrum half. Fine piece of covering by the Munster men. So Australia still have not found that final conclusive gap. moved it very nicely indeed. Very swift transfer indeed. Damien Smith was released. He looked as if he's carrying perhaps an injury, and both Charlie Haley and Derek Tobin nailed him. Well, the rain is really chucking it down. That's untidy at the front. The referee decides that that was knocked forward in the line-out and has given the put into the scrummage to the men in red, the Munster side. Paul McCarthy on the loosehead side for Munster, showing his versatility. He played in both tests against New Zealand in the summer on the Irish tour there, his first 2 caps, and he's standing up quite well to Dan Crowley. Interesting selection because John Fitzgerald, Irish international, has occupied this position for Munster for some years. 3 against Munster for delaying the put-in. Taken quickly by Mike Briel. No scrum half, there's Eckert. Just how slippery the ball is shown there, and Munster penalised for not allowing the ball to be played. And David Nucifora, without any hesitation, has asked Tim Kelleher to come up and have another crack at goal.
Yes, I think if Kelleher converts this, I think he's starting to open up a bit of a gap between Munster and from this point on the game may more noticeably start to slip away from Munster, and therefore, as I say, the Australians will start to play a little bit more of an expansive game, notwithstanding the fact that quite a bit of rain has fallen down and the ball is slipping.
Quite a bit of rain is falling. That really is a singularly unpleasant afternoon. A lot of people out in the open, and a proliferation of golf umbrellas. And the focus of attention is on Tim Kelleher. Inside the Munster 22, and he falls down, but he won't care because the ball has gone between the posts, and Tim Kelleher has made it 4 kicks out of 4 and has extended the Australian lead to 9 points with about 9 minutes of the first half remaining.
Penalty goal by Tim Kelleher. Australians lead by 12 points.
Well, that looks rather nasty. He got that cut in the first half, Dan Crowley, and a good chance that we may see Ewan McKenzie come on, and Crowley indeed is diagnosed as unfit to continue. So Crowley, a very strong scrummaging prop forward, has gone off the field. The Australians down to 7 forwards. Ball taken by Briel. That's a clever kick by Anthony Eckert, the scrum half. If it bounces nicely, it's going to make a lot of ground. Oh, Charlie Haley just managed to get away with that and no more. And he's put the ball into touch. And there's another Australian injury. It's David Nucifora, the skipper. And that wasn't a bad kick at all. And Charlie Haley initially made a mess of that. Damien Smith overran it, and Haley did well enough to get it into touch. Ewan McKenzie, who played against Leinster in the opening game, has come on for Dan Crowley and is going to double up on the throwing in duties as well, since his skipper Nucifora is not injured. McKenzie without a number on his jersey. Not a bad throw at all, one of the better ones we've seen. It's well tidied up by Warwick Wall. Eckert hasn't seen the ball. Terry Kingston comes hurtling through. Richard Toombs gobbled up by Munsterman. Galvin Danaher, the Irish skipper, thumping tackle by Mike Briel. Now, was it late? But the referee's waiting for advantage. Chance of a Munster try. It's gone loose on the line. Richard Wallace is in there. Great tackling by Charlie Haley. Munsterman piling in like demons. There was red shirts everywhere. And that's going to be put into the scrummage. And it's going to be a Munster ball. And Nucifora, the Australian hooker and captain for the day, is back in the middle of the front row, but it all stemmed from the fact that the Australian scrum half, Anthony Eckert, didn't really have his wits about him.
Yes, and a super passage of play, because the referee saw the penalty opportunity and gave the advantage to Munster. And here you can see the Munster forward steaming back in, and the ball moved out to Larkin into the middle of the field, and that's where the penalty was given on the late tackle. This is where the referee played the advantage and allowed Munster to come through and bring them right up to the scrummage situation close to the line.
The man in the wars for Australia is the 23-year-old Darren Juney, another member of the Randwick club. He's got a bit of a thump. Now, what can Munster do from here? Can we go to see one of these traditional fiery Munster shoves from the set scrummage? They're outweighed by some stone or so a man, so it's all down to technique and commitment. Good strike by Kingston. Oh, well done, Munster. Not a bad shove. The scrum collapses. The referee says, let's do it again. And on the far side, Ger Clohessy saying that the Australians were taking that ball down, or taking the scrummage down. So a chance again for Munster. Heave, heave, the crowd are urging. Ben Cronin is doing that. It's collapsed. The Australians are being blamed, and Munster have got a penalty. Now they may well up for another scrummage. Terry Kingston is saying, yes, we'll have another scrummage. They love this close quarter stuff down here in Munster. See how low they're getting. They've worked hard in their scrums, Munster. They did 40 or 50 yesterday in their final training session. McKenzie just on against McCarthy on this side. And he's holding McCarthy in a position where McCarthy can't transmit a show. Munster are surging again. And that's going to be a penalty try. Well, my goodness, controversy indeed. I really would have doubted whether or not Munster could have got over from there, but the referee decided that the Australians have deliberately collapsed the scrum, thus preventing Munster scoring a try. And just coming up to half-time, that was just what Munster needed.
Yes, I mean, there was an enormous commitment given by Munster, and you can see before the first scrum that the back row were completely in the number 8 was committed to the pushing position. And whilst it's very difficult to determine whether Munster were ever going to get across, because they had 3 bites of the cherry and then 3 times the scrum collapsed, so really maybe the decision is correct.
The straightforward conversion taken by Charlie Henny, and that means the Australian lead has been reduced to just 2 single points in controversial circumstances as we come up to the interval. Well, there it is again. It was a good strike by Terry Kingston. See how it was guided across to the middle of the back row for Cronin to hold. Now, Munster got the surge on, and the referee, having looked 2 or 3 times at earlier scrums, decided straight away that it was collapsed by Australia. Cameron Lillycrap, the loose head prop, I think was the man involved. Well, that really will put some fire in the Munster bellies, as if there wasn't enough there already. One or two people may just be turning their thoughts back to 1978 when Munster beat the All Blacks. Great thumping tackle by the Australians. We look a bit unsettled. Ball had gone forward. Paul Cowell, the 23-year-old Queenslander, one of the few uncapped players in this Australian side. And a stoppage now for an injury to Terry Kingston, the Munster captain for the day. Interesting choice of captain, since Philip Danaher was the man who captained Munster all last season and captained Ireland. Perhaps Kingston is the man for this particular occasion. He's been around a long time. He's a very tough little customer. Captained the Irish team against Japan in the World Cup a year ago. And a lot of smiles on Munster faces with fairly good cause. No place for the faint-hearted, that front row. Getting a good Munster scrum. That's Coker. He's immensely strong. He hasn't been held, so he's quite entitled to pick it up, and he's kept going as men are shielding him almost American football style. Well, Coker really, what a blasting run, and a Munster man in the way. That's Herbert. Nice little zoom through to Kelleher. Kelleher's got all the points so far, and he's got another 5. That really was the perfect response from the Australians as half-time beckons. I think they were probably quite annoyed about the controversy over the penalty try award. And this man, Tim Kelleher, who's kicked 4 penalties, has come right through and scored the try himself. They won it very well indeed. Look at the lovely crisp handling from close range. It was Herbert who held it up and delayed the pass beautifully for Kelleher to drive through unopposed.
I think you have to give 90% of the credit for that try to Coker, because he took that ball from almost the halfway and brought it to a position close to the Munster posts and set up a tremendous run, which allowed the Australians show their skills under a tight position, really, to wing the ball out to Kelleher, who scored his try neatly.
And it's Kelleher himself. He can score tries and he can kick goals. So Kelleher, the perfect response as far as the Australians are concerned, leading by 19 points to 10 as half-time beckons. Rain comes slicing down again into the Munster faces. Paul McCarthy takes, but the ball did not go anywhere near the prerequisite 10 metres. And the Wallabies have opted for the scrummage in the middle of the field. And the rain really is coming thundering down. It's very, very unpleasant out there. We had to wait for just about 40 minutes for the first glimpse of the slick handling of the Australian three-quarters. And as Fergus Slattery quite rightly says, it all began, much of it would have been down to a great thundering run by number 8 Troy Coker. That's him again. Support now from Scott Young and from Briel. It's good driving. They lay that ball back well, a man straight in there to scoop it up. That's Scott Young again. That's the scrum half Eckert. McKenzie, no number in his back, replaced with Proppers in the middle. Munster men looking suspiciously offside on either side of this maul. The Wallabies have it. It's Cal. It's Toombs. That's Kelleher. And fierce Munster defence, as you'd expect. And the Australians just finding that at the end of 40 minutes, as they did last Saturday in Dublin against Leinster, they're starting to get a bit stronger, and they've now got the feel of the game. And as we said earlier, most of these guys, it's their very first game of the tour. Well taken by Ben Cronin. Australia coming round offside, and perhaps the last kick of the half. Sam Scott Young, the man who infringed. Jim Galville makes a good contact, puts the ball into touch, but Monsieur Marc Desclos from France decides that with 42 minutes played, had enough of the first half, which sees, at the end of which sees Australia leading by 19 points to 10. Tim Kelleher, who's got all 19 of the Australian points, gets the second half underway. Richard Costello, the Munster second row forward, takes the ball from the kick-off. Peter Clohessy, the tight end prop, trying to work it back. They decided to take the Australians on, but they lost possession. Lucy Fora, the skipper, and Australia handling the ball, an Australian handling the ball on the ground, and no doubt Jim Galvin, or indeed in this case it's Brian Walsh, is going to be asked to go for position. Only struck that very well. It's Brian Walsh from Cork Constitution. Kingston. Well taken by Scott Young. That's Toombs. Half blocked the kick. Well, this could land nicely for Smith. It's the big centre Anthony Herbert's in there. And that's rather nasty. I don't know what that was all about. There's been a fair bit of niggle all the way through. It's Anthony Herbert, who's nearly 15 stones, which is not bad for a centre three-quarter. Terry Kingston, the Munster skipper, plays his club rugby here in this very ground for Dolphin. Well taken by Ben Cronin, Gary Owen, Tobin. That's Ger Earls. Australians have held him up well. The question is, can Earls turn round and make the ball available? Because, well, he has. Tobin, badly sliced. A good lively start to the second half by Munster. Wallabies have it. It's Coker. It's hard to stop. He's laid it back. Munster seemed to have won that, but illegally. And there again, all sorts of niggle creeping in. Peter Clohessy, the Munster tight head prop, having a few words with one of the Australians. She's enjoying herself. Kelleher. Good thump, he's hit it. So that's halfway. The rain has just eased off very slightly, but the ball is bound to be slippery. And life at the line-out is not going to be too pleasant for the jumpers, nor indeed for the respective scrum halves. Scott Young at the back for Australia. Sam Scott Young. Ger Earls at the back for Munster. Crowd getting a little bit impatient with David Nucifora, who's in no rush to throw it in. Knocked forward. And the scrum to the Wallabies. Both sides with a replacement. The Wallabies, Ewan McKenzie, a tight head prop for Dan Crowley. And Munster have Jim Galvin at outside half for Dan Lockett. They really do drive forward and get across that gain line. And Munster once again preventing the Wallabies from playing the ball. They tend to be lying over quite a bit.
Yeah, very good play there by Herbert, the big Aussie centre, and it's the right tactic when they're taking the ball flat, going nowhere, to bring a big player like that into play and bring it back into his forward to start again.
Kelleher, the fullback, hasn't found touch. That's Tobin, the Munster scrum half. Oh, he's hit that, such a thump. Great bit of chasing by Jack Clark. But Kelleher recovers well and makes up in some way for his own error. All 19 points, remembered, he scored, Tim Kelleher. Just 22. Munster shortened the line. Cronin at the back, the number 8. In front of him, Galway, and then Costello. That's for Cronin. Nicely flipped inside to Galway. Well tackled. Tobin. Good driving by Ger Clohessy. Tobin on the narrow side. This is Cronin, the number 8. Inside to McCarthy, the loose head. The Munster men, the red jerseys, a matter of a few metres out. This is Tobin. Well, he's released that well. Cronin picks it up. Kingston's in there, and McCarthy. Clark at scrum half. Nicely moved. That's Walsh. What an all-enveloping tackle that was by Herbert. But the Australian three-quarter line completely offside, and a great surging run. Little tap by Tobin, the scrum half. Now can he wiggle his way through? Well, who'd like to be an Australian there? Ewan McKenzie, the man who's on the ground. And I think the referee does not particularly like some of that stamping.
Well, I think that was a big mistake by the Munster scrum half, Jerry Tobin, because he took the ball rather impetuously, and this was where the whole action came about. He takes the penalty quickly, sets it up on his own, gets caught by the Australians, and of course the ball isn't going to come out. And the frustration of the Munster forwards trying to hack one of the Australian guys off the ball, of course, knowing that the ball was well away from there, the referee penalised him.
What a fine kicker of the ball is Tim Kelleher. He's had a very, very good afternoon. All the Wallabies points down to him. A try and a conversion and 4 penalties. Record for most points scored in a tour match by an Australian is out of Alan Leeds against Buller, 1986 South African tour. Taken quickly by Coker. Oh, look at the strength of the man, great upper body strength. He's turned well. And they need to release this. Munster men came hurtling into the wrong side. And because the Australians couldn't work it back, Munster get the put into the scrummage. It's a peculiar law, but it's the new law, and it's one that everyone's going to have to live with this season. The touch judge in this side, I think, may just have spotted something. And he's drawn the attention of the French referee to a little misdemeanor by someone. Michael Braille has been spoken to. David Lucifora looks a little bit bemused. And the result of all that is a penalty to Munster. And is it within the range of Charlie Haley? And he seems to think it is. So the niggle that permeated throughout the first half, Fergus, hasn't really disappeared.
No, and obviously Munster are going to fight for as long as they feel they've got a sustainable chance of victory.
Well, that was the incident, and there was Brill going in with the feet, and that was fair enough from the touch judge. It's a big-ish kick, this, for Charlie Haley. And he hasn't quite got the distance. That's Herbert. Enterprise indeed from the Wallabies, and Kelleher makes no mistake. So a let off perhaps for the Wallabies, because 3 points there for Munster would have closed the gap just to 6, and with modern day scoring 6 points is nothing whatsoever. Again Munster reduced the line out. Cronin at the back, in front of him Costello, and then Mick Galway and Paul McCarthy right at the front. Again they go for Cronin. Got the ball and got an Australian. He's done well. That's Danaher. Lovely little dummy by Danaher. He's not afraid to take men on. Lays it back nicely. That's Galvin. This is Ger Earls, the flank forward. Great defence by the Wallabies. No way through. That's Clohessy. Tight head prop in the touch. And they didn't really make much ground. They've come right across the field. And again, that niggle coming in. The two skippers are going to have to try to calm their men down. Throw in the line is going to go to the Wallabies. It's Mike Brill, flank forward. The crowd annoyed that the Wallabies seem to be taking their time about getting their throw done properly. Well done by Costello. And the free against Munster at the line out as Ewan McKenzie bundled through.
One of the problems the Australians are having this happen now is that they're playing into a fairly stiff breeze, and Munster will use that to try and play the game as much in the Australian half as possible.
Cameron Lillicrap somewhat tentatively reverses into a blanket of Munstermen who've taken him forward. It's a great play by the Munster pack, and they're rewarded not just with a roar from the crowd but with the put into the scrummage. And you know, the Munster crowd here may just sense with this wind advantage and only 9 points the difference that genuine upset could be a reality. Derek Tobin. It's Richard Wallace. That's well kept in play by Paul Cal, the outside half, and Jim Galvin just not getting his communication right at half-back. The clouds seem to have disappeared temporarily. It's Mick Galway looking pretty lean and trim. Peter Clohessy looking pretty menacing. There's Ger Clohessy, the brother. The Australians just penalised yet again for delaying. They're taking their time with those lineouts. Terry Kingston, I think, is going to ask Jim Galvin maybe to do the old Gary On. It's a little a bit far for a Gary Owen, but it's going to test Kelleher. All sorts of a mix-up there. All taken by Damien Smith, who's hauled down. Now, if Munster could get men there quickly, Australia not releasing, as Munster go in feet first. Now, this is a decent penalty goal chance, and Terry Kingston won't allow Derek Tobin to make the decisions. But behind the post, Kelleher let it bounce, the first mistake he's made, and then he slipped. Damien Smith covered up well, but Philip Danaher and 4 or 5 Munster went up very quickly. Foremost of all was Mick Galway, the second row.
Well, you had actually 2 bad mistakes there. First of all, Kelleher allowing the ball to bounce, and the second thing, Smith, having taken the ball on and tidied it up, ended up with his back to his own side and really made the ball available to Munster. But again, it all emanated from Lillicrap delaying at the throw-in, and really all the changes in the laws of the game have been made to speed up the game. And here's this guy, seems to be taking a bit of time and a day to throw the ball into the line-out, so obviously he's going to be penalised for delaying as he has done.
So Charlie Haley, who missed with a penalty attempt from long range about 6 minutes ago, again has a chance to close the gap to just 6 points in favour of the world champions Australia. That's what he has to do. And he's done it very successfully. So just 13 minutes gone in the second half, and Charlie Haley, another successful kick from him, has closed the gap to 13 points to 19.
Australians lead 19 points to 13.
Well, the gauntlet has been well and truly thrown down, and there's a great rumbling and a great sense of expectancy here at Musgrave Park in Cork. Kelleher restarts. Costello can't hold. Tobin is swallowed up by the Australians, and eventually it was Ger Earls, the flank forward, who got it into touch. And little Derek Tobin seems to have taken a thump. He's his club rugby in Limerick with the Young Munster club. And they do play, Fergus, a fairly uncompromising sort of rugby in Young Munster.
This is where he's getting he's been caught by 2 of the bigger Australian forwards and bundled to the ground. He's obviously picked up a bit of a knock, and he's quite a small, petite little scrum half, so he's got a lot of poundage buried atop of him there.
Derek Tobin getting a little bit of attention. There was that nicely placed kick again. Richard Costello couldn't hold it, and unfortunately Derek Tobin got Briel and Waugh at the same time. Lucy Fora with the throw for Australia. That's Eckert, helped by Lillicrap, and Munster really bundling through. That's great driving by the Munster pack. They've won it. Galvin. It's a bit misdirected. Kelleher won't like that. May have drifted that straight into touch on the full. Indeed he has. So good Munster forward play, and Australian mistakes keeping Munster very much in this game. 6 points between them, and we've still 25 minutes of the second half to go. Cronin gets it in the second attempt. Went forward from a Munster hand, and the Wallabies will have to put into the scrummage. It's the massive Coker. Smith. That's a clever kick. That's going to test Charlie Haley. Takes it outside his 22 and has to step into touch. So in one very quick piece of thinking, the Australians have made a lot of ground, and Munster seem to have a man down injured just inside the Australians' half, but play will have to go on. It's Ger Clossy, the brother of the tight head prop Peter Clossy, and the referee is now coming to have a little look at him. He was the man who had the unenviable task of stopping Troy Coker in full flight. But there's quite a difference between this second string Australian pack and the first string even though this is a bigger, heavier outfit. They just don't have the experience, Fergus.
Yes, one of the things from Kelleher at full back, he's going to have to get under some of those high balls, because it's a signal to Munster that there's a bit of a weakness there, and if they get enough ball, they'll just keep banging it up to him, and you know, he could have an untidy afternoon and could force one or two serious errors for Australia. So I think Kelleher's got to get under some of those high balls and tidy them up immediately.
Ger Clohessy seems to be 100% again. Lucy Fora with the throw. That doesn't look straight. Well taken by Munster. Australia win it at the second attempt. That's Toombs swallowed up by Philip Danaher, the Irish skipper. He's released it. Hacked through. That's Cronin. That's well down by Warwick Waugh. Munster have it. That's Galvin. Richard Wallace. That's a good kick by Richard Wallace. Back goes Richard Toombs. Well, the pressure's starting to tell. Costello takes well. McCarthy, the loose head prop, tidies, and the penalty has been given for offside. And a straightforward chance now for Munster to narrow it to 3 slender points. So it's very typical Munster rugby, Fergus. They've been playing that at interprovincial level, and a lot of the clubs play this sort of rugby, but my goodness, it's effective. Yeah,
again, you see the Australians move the ball, try to move the ball. It broke down in the middle of the field, and when the ball went to ground, Munster hacked it on in traditional fashion. And one of the Australians had the opportunity to try and go down on it, but he tried to kick it in a most untidy fashion and really opened up the whole. And that's a clash there of Costello, and that's the big Munster second row. Clashing with a smaller Australian, and yet he's coming out with the injury. So it just shows you that sometimes it's not all wrong. That he's certainly taken a bit of a knock.
Well, they really are delighted by the Munster performance this afternoon. There's a few Australians in there, and they won't be altogether delighted should this kick go over, because it'll then just be down to one single score. Charlie Haley with a penalty and a conversion of Munster's penalty try in the first half, a penalty in the second half. Not a sound at Musgrave Park. No, there is. 10 points this afternoon for Charlie Haley, 16 points for Munster, and just 3 points between them. So Richard Costello, the man who perhaps by his fine take instigated that penalty, seems to have a bit of a dead leg. He's got a bit of a thump. Kelleher restarts for the Wallabies, who now must be calling upon on their reserves. Play on, says the referee. That's Eckert, the scrum half. And even the Munster prop forwards and front row forwards, Peter Clohessy and Terry Kingston, throwing themselves about with grim determination. And Clohessy, I think, has hurt himself. There's a couple of replacements down there. He's made contact with somebody in the touchline, which is unfortunate. So the Australians under any amount of pressure. Eckert having to steal round the narrow side. Clohessy really threw himself at the Australian scrum half.
I think the main problem for Munster now is Richard Costello. He really does seem to have a dead leg, and he's certainly one of their key line-out jumpers, and if he was to go now, I think it would cause all sorts of problems for Munster.
Peter Clohessy seems to be fine. Paul McCarthy scooped that back nicely for the Munstermen. Thank goodness the pack have played well. Galvin, oh, there's a gap there. Oh, he just overdid that. The Australians trying the counter. Well, that was very unfortunate. And the referee, I think, is saying that the ball was deliberately knocked forward by an Australian. So the free kick is going to go to Munster, and really, should we even think about 1978? Munster victory over the All Blacks? And the answer has to be yes, we should be thinking about it. Kelleher takes this one well, calls for the mark, and has given it. But there is an awful lot of needles still in there, and Anthony Herbert and Philip Danaher having words with each other. Referee telling the Munster men to get back 10 metres. Kelleher hasn't found touch, that's a bad mistake. That's Charlie Haley. As Kelleher has knocked it forward. The referee doesn't let anything go on and blows this whistle. And Kelleher, who scored all the 19 Australian points, is not looking good under pressure. And don't they just love it?
I think the referee should have penalised him there, because having made the mistake, he actually physically shouldered one of the Munster players off the ball. So, I mean, really the referee might have given a penalty against Australia there. Certainly Kelleher's got to get under that ball.
Just the 3 points between them, and still most of the final quarter to go. This time Munster collapsing the scrum, McCarthy on the far side, and a little bit of a let-off for the Wallabies. And Richard Costello, the Munster second row, limps away from that scrum. No mistake this time from Kelleher. He's found his touch. There he is. That's Kelleher. There again, the Australians just taking their time. Seems to be a bit of communication problem between the man at the back of the line, Sam Scott Young, and the man at the front who's throwing in, David Musifora, the skipper. Great jump by Garrick Morgan. Not altogether unassisted, I would suspect. McGolway seems to have stolen that, but he was offside as he did it. And no doubt Kelleher will try to make some more ground for the Australians. 24 minutes gone in the second half, so plenty of time. The ball had gone into touch. The Munster official on the field, I think, having looked at Richard Costello to see how he is, but he's not going to go off unless, I think he's carried off. I think they want him to come off. And if that's the case, then it would be Owen O'Sullivan from Old Crescent. So Richard Costello is definitely going to have to go off. So Owen O'Sullivan from the Old Crescent Club come onto the field for Richard Costello.
Richard Costello retires injured, replaced by Owen O'Sullivan.
Well, that's unfortunate for Costello, who toured New Zealand with the Irish side, played in 3 of the provincial games on that tour. It's well taken at the back by Australia. It's a fine thump by Paul Cal. Peter Closey tied easy for Munster. And his fellow young Munster clubmate, Derek Tobin, gets it away. And Munster have been much more composed this second half.
Yes, well, of course, Munster are really trying to get the Australians to play their type of game, and they're getting in and spoiling and unsettling the Australians. And there are a few little scraps and a few barks out there, and it has unsettled the Australians. And once they start concentrating on what Munster are doing, then they start to forget about what they should be doing themselves. I think they've just lacked a little bit of composure in this second half.
They're not getting settled ball. There's no established platform there, and that's because there's been a huge element of ferocity about the way Munster have played. Again, a lot of feet going in. The touch judge keeps his flag down. The referee awards the scrummage to Munster. And no doubt somebody will plant that ball high up into the Wallabies 22, because they've realised by now that the Wallabies fullback Tim Kelleher is not so good under pressure. They really are dragging men down. It's knock down, drag them out sort of stuff. Paul McCarthy just lucky enough to escape. Good scrum by Munster. That's another tester for Kelleher. He may want to let that go. Unfortunately for Munster, that was a wee bit too far, but they'll have to receive the dropout. And they won't mind that. About 13 minutes of this game remaining. It's Munster 16, Australia 19. World champions only 3 points adrift. It's a bit too far, a bit of uncertainty there. Tobin, Danaher, head of a high tackle. There's Richard Wallace, and he's kicked very nicely. Richard Wallace has grown in stature in the last season, coming through to have his first full season of internationalism. More experienced Australian forwards with you today. Cameron Lillicrap, the 29-year-old from Queensland University. Brian Cronin, who's had a great afternoon. Unfortunately, Munster give away the free. Now, this is interesting by Australia. That was Scott Young. Little chip kick through. Obstruction that was by Munster. I'm going to take it short again, and this time I think Kelleher is going to be asked to go for a touch. So if it stays at 16-19, the Australians will be satisfied, if not altogether pleased. Well, Kelleher hasn't found touch at all. Yes, he has. I thought for 1 minute he was going to get away with it. Strongish breeze in the favour of Munster here at Musgrave Park. Just over 10 minutes remaining. Referee not happy with the spacing at the line-out. And the free to the Australians. Bit of uncertainty just in what they're doing from these little taps. That's Lillicrap. That's Coker. He's a hard man to bring down. Loads of experience. That's a very dangerous piece of kicking there. Chip kick through for Herbert and Juni to chase. Wallace has to scamper back, and the Australians may just have found that little extra gear as we go into the final 10 minutes of this game. Richard Wallace covering back very well indeed, the current Irish right winger. Again, the crowd don't like the length of time spent in communicating the line-out signal from scrum half to hooker and to the forwards. That's gone loose. That's the way to deal with it. Philip Danaher. And that's made an awful lot of ground for Munster. And Munster back in the Australian half, and with every chance now of launching yet another attack. And they're still at it. Well, this is absolutely disgraceful. This is absolutely dreadful, and there are people getting thumped, and oh, that's really, there's no place for this whatsoever, and the referee must surely do something about it. If the touch judge can pick somebody out, then somebody should go.
I think we'll see that this started off with two of the prop forwards, and on the way back, and if we get a rerun on it in a minute, we'll see just what happened. I think Mackenzie was involved in it, and he was, I don't know whether he was with Clohessy, but then it led from that and spilt over into a fracas. I mean, really it's crazy, because there's only two guys involved, and then all these other guys unknowingly or unwittingly get involved just for the sake of it. It's ridiculous.
Well, let me see if we can see what's happening on the way back.
You could see Mackenzie had a go there.
Mackenzie had a go at McCarthy, and then Closey hit Mackenzie, and everybody hit everybody else. And it really was absolutely awful.
But certainly it was definitely McCarthy and Mackenzie. And Mackenzie was the guy who started it by pushing, and it all just spilled over into an absolute disgrace.
The referee going to send both of them off. Well, he's got Garrick Morgan, and he's got Mick Galway there, and he sent the 2 second row forwards off. Well, they were not the men who started it, and that's pretty awful. But somebody really had to go, and it was rather unfortunate. While these two may not have been entirely innocent, they have been both sent off. Mick Galway, the Irish international, and Garrick Morgan, the Australian international, have been sent from the field by the French referee Marc Desclaux. And he's saying that he doesn't want them sitting on the bench, he wants them right off the field, and well, he's entitled to do that. And this game, which has threatened to boil over right from the start, has been really brought down in terms of its perception all around the world. That's Tobin. Ball taken by Scott Young. Munster men penalised for going right over. And the whole thing is not over yet. And I think the referee is saying that Peter Closey, the Munster tight head prop, was stamping. And it's not the first time that he's been spoken to. And is he going to get his marching orders? Terry Kingston doing his best to understand what the referee is saying. I said, okay, I'll try and calm them down. And it's very difficult for him. That's Kelleher. Well, Fergus, it's very sad.
It is, yeah, but you've got to get back to the game now, and it's a real test of the Australians, because Munster are going to fire everything at them in the dying minutes of this game. And certainly Australia have got to play their cards very close to their chest now, play it tight, play it clean, and make sure they get their touches.
Well, the crowd really getting behind the Munstermen. Referee not letting anything develop on the ground whatsoever, and quite rightly too. Munster going over the ball and killing it. Well, unfortunately this game will not be remembered for some reasonable attempts at playing rugby. A lovely Australian try just before half-time was perhaps the only rugby highlight of it. And unfortunately it's going to be remembered for that disgraceful brawl, which meant the sending off of Mick Galway and Garrick Morgan. There's Ger Closey, who's been very much in the action. And the Munstermen really not very happy about the length of time the Australians are taking to put the ball in. That was well taken by Briel. Munster win that. That's O'Sullivan, the replacement. That's Wallace. It was quite a high tackle there from Scott Young. Not the first time he's been penalised for that. Really did go in high on Richard Wallace, and that's what incensed this very partisan crowd here even further. It's a fine kick to touch, just again a replay of the incident. So Munster with about 4 minutes remaining. There's going to be a little bit of injury time. A little bit of time added on because of that disgraceful brawl. Terry Kingston is called for a three-man line-out. It's Paul McCarthy, then Owen O'Sullivan, then Ben Cronin at the back. Cronin couldn't quite hold. Australians really have to pour back. They seem to have won that ball on the ground. Munster penalised, but the referee playing advantage. And yet again, the touch judge has got his flag extended on the far side. So yet again, somebody has been infringing or has been guilty of foul play. And I think, I'm not quite sure who it is. There was the long ball to the back, meant for Ben Cronin. It was well picked up by Eckert as Philip Danaher piled in. And the penalty has been given against the Australians, and Charlie Haley has this chance to tie this game at 19 points all, and there's still a few minutes of play after that. Well, judging by what the Australian first team did to Leinster a week ago at Lansdowne Road in Dublin, and people said there was not a great deal of difference between the two sides, gallant Munster were not really expected to come this close to the Australians. And now, if this goes over from Charlie Haley, well, it couldn't be any closer. Haley from straight in front of the posts. And straight between the posts. What a remarkable afternoon. We've got Munster tying with the world champions on 19 points apiece. We've had 2 men sent off, and we've got 2 minutes of playing time to go.
Yes, and the tremendous pressure which Munster have put on the Australians has just been too much, and they've dealt badly with it, and they could rue the many missed opportunities they had earlier on in the game.
Well, this is going to be a test of the resolve of the world champions. Philip Danaher, the Irish skipper, who captained Munster throughout the interprovincial campaign last year, takes from the kickoff. Derek Tobin is in the scrum half weights. Munster pack really have performed splendidly. It's Brian Walsh. What a monster that is. Oh, goodness me, the crowd ecstatic on the far side. Brian Walsh, if he's ever kicked a better one from the hand than that, I'll be very surprised. And all Munster need to do is to keep up this pressure. And there's every possibility that they would just love to force another penalty, Fergus.
Well, I mean, that's the likely outcome of the game, is that Munster are going to kick everything up into that Australian half and just keep the pressure on them and hope that they can force a penalty. And just those 3 points, that's all they want, that's all they need to record another memorable victory down here in Cork.
That's David Nucifora, the man who's led Australia this afternoon. What a battle he's had with his opposite number, Terry Kingston. Back in the Munster side. Galvin with a drop and goal. Oh! Unbelievable! They simply cannot believe it. Munster beat the All Blacks at Thomond Park in Limerick in 1978. And here the world champions Australia are about to be well and truly dethroned. And yet again, Munster can say that they are the true champions of the world, and no doubt they'll do it all night. That hasn't gone 10 metres from the restart. And Munster, if they get this ball, they will kick it as far as they possibly can. There it is again from behind the goal. Galvin under fierce pressure right between the posts. A gem.
Beautiful. I mean, you can nearly write the script as to what's going to happen. Munster will get this ball and they just thump it right down into the corner and just keep the pressure on Australia and keep them pinned in there for the remainder of the game. So it's going to take a remarkable piece of play now by Australia to dig this game out of what is now almost an inevitable victory for Munster.
Well, 7 forwards apiece, remember. Mick Galway and Garrick Morgan both dismissed. This is Galvin, the hero of the hour. The man who came on as replacement has maybe won the game for Munster. This is Damien Smith. Toombs. Little Derek Tobin. He's kept it alive, which he maybe shouldn't do, but he's put it into the Australian 22. And that's Troy Coker covering back. Indeed, it was Michael Briel. And Musgrave Park will absolutely burst at the seams if the score stays at 22-19 for Munster. The record against touring sides here has been quite phenomenal. David Nucifora, the 30-year-old captain for the day, well, you can see the frustration all over his face. That's Owen O'Sullivan. Munster are penalised again, not observing the gap at the line-out. We've got 2 minutes gone here. There's David Campese celebrating his 30th birthday today. A lot of people would like to have seen him playing, but he's not. And unless something untoward happens, we won't see him coming on. There's the man who scored all 19 of the Wallabies points, the full-back Tim Kelleher. Time now ticking away. 42 minutes played in the second half. And the world champions about to lose to an Irish provincial side. Terry Kingston into touch, the Munster skipper. What an inspired choice he was. It's been pretty unpleasant and pretty brutal for most of this game up front. The Wallabies win it. Last chance for them, perhaps. Anthony Herbert, Mr. Dependable himself, makes a mistake. The referee says that knock forward from Herbert is going to be the last act of this game, and it is absolutely unbelievable. The full-time score here at Musgrave Park shows that the world champions Australia, who had some wonderful games last year when they played in the World Cup, beating Ireland and beating New Zealand, have lost in their second match on this short tour. Munster, who defeated the All Blacks in 1978, have beaten the world champions. A nasty enough afternoon here, 2 men sent off, very little good rugby, but they won't care in Munster because their side has won by 22 points to 19. Referee for this afternoon from France, Monsieur Marc Desclaux, and it's Munster to get the game underway. Dan Larkin, the outside half, who's played most of his club rugby at full-back, reverting to his international schools position to start this game. 80 minutes of no doubt pulsating rugby ahead. The pitch in pretty good condition, and the wind and the rain, which threatened to envelop Cork early this morning, have died away. The French referee just taking his time and has asked David Nucifora, the captain of the Australians today, if he's ready. He says yes. And Munster against Australia, 1992 underway. That's taken straight away by Mike Braille, the flank forward. Australians just outside their 22. And for the opening exchanges, I'm quite sure this big, strong Australian pack will try to take on their Munster opposite numbers. So the Australians failing to get the ball away from the initial possession, and that means the put into the scrummage is going to go to Munster. Interesting for the home side, they've got Paul McCarthy, who won 2 caps for Ireland in New Zealand in the tests on the tight head side, is playing on the near side of the scrum, the loose head. Good strike by Kingston. Cronin controls. That's Larkin. Jack Clark came infield. That's a bit speculative and a bit long. And Tim Kelleher will dot that down for a 22 to the Wallabies. Anthony Herbert, that's Jack Clark, capped 6 times by Ireland. Also plays his rugby in the centre. Restart by the Wallabies, as will take no further part of this tour. Alas for him, he's got severe disc trouble in his back. And the referee is coming over to have a look at this chunky little man, Dan Crowley, who can play on either side of the front row. Played in all 3 tests against the British Lions in 1989.
I think if one was to speculate on the outcome of the game, notwithstanding the fact that this is the Australian second string side, it is on Munster standards a fairly poor Munster side, and I don't think they're going to be able to maintain the very fine tradition they've had against touring sides, and I think it could very quickly become a one-sided affair.
Well, 3-0 then to the tourists. Dan Crowley takes his place back in the front row. A little bit of a problem on the far side between Lillicrap and the Munster tight head, Peter Clohessy. That's Coker. Got support from Scott Young. Beautifully done by the Wallabies. This is Kelleher. Smith outside him. Has he put that directly into touch, or has it bounced beautifully? It's bounced beautifully. Well, that really was a kick of pinpoint accuracy, Fergus.
Just 5 metres from the Munster line, and Australia did the right thing there. They were cut out. They had no other option but to kick it into the corner. A beautiful kick.
Kingston takes it quickly. Tap back by Cronin. It's gone loose. And Jack Clark comes scampering through, and the Wallabies are penalised at the line out. And this will give Munster a little bit of a breather. They can come right out to 15 metres. There's an injury to a Munster player, and it looks like Peter Clohessy, the tight head prop forward, a fairly uncompromising gentleman. Peter Clohessy plays his club rugby in Limerick for the young Munster side. An ankle injury he seems to have sustained. Now, should he go off, it would mean that the Irish international John Fitzgerald would come on for the same club, and Paul McCarthy would probably move over. But Clohessy seems to be fine. And the ball put nicely into touch by Dan Larkin. Terry Kingston, the Munster skipper. Australia with really big men. Warwick Ward jumping at 2, and Garrick Morgan at 4. Coker at the back, all in the region of 6'5" or 6'6". If they maintain that gap. Well taken at the front by Mick Galway. That's great traditional Munster fire and drive. Well, there's a bit of a punch-up has broken out between one or two people, between Crowley and Kingston, and that really is very nasty. This is all totally unnecessary. There's Troy Coker and the smallest man on the Munster side, the scrum half Derek Tobin, having a go at each other. And this French referee, Monsieur Duclos, is going to have to take the game very much in hand. We didn't get anything like that at all last Saturday in the game at Lansdowne Road between Leinster and the Australians, and we could well do without that.
I just think the origins of that may have emanated from a little bit of stamping by one or two of the Munster players, and a reaction from, like I say, one or two of the Australian players.
He's got support from Wall. Australian scrum half. Eckert pulled in. And a penalty. And the chance for the first points. And the weather's starting to improve. The sun's starting to shine. And that will encourage the Australians. And this is not the start that Munster would have wished for.
No, but it's been a first-class start by the Australians. They've shown a lot of confidence there, taking that penalty opportunity and deciding to run, using their big forwards, and particularly Coker there punched a big hole in the middle of the Munster defence. Certainly the Australians are very composed and have not been put back by the reputation of Munster and their general attitude to touring sides.
As this kick is about to be taken, the Australian prop, Dan Crowley, has come off. There's a bit of blood coming from his head, but in the meantime, it's Tim Kelleher for his first points of the tour. A bit of ill-natured booing, and as the sun really comes out, Tim Kelleher puts the Australians 3 points ahead, and we've just got 5 minutes on the board.
For Australia, kicked by fullback Tim Kelleher. And the Munster branch and the Rugby Union would appeal to the people in the ground.
Start by Kelleher. There was the incident again. Troy Coker, it was, the big number 8 who's played his club rugby for both Oxford University and the Harlequins, really driving forward, and Munstermen under all sorts of pressure, giving away the penalty. The restart by Larkin, that hasn't gone 10 metres. The Australians, led by David Nusiforo, the hooker, opting for the scrummage back in the centre of the field. And there's Dan Crowley, who came on as a replacement for the unfortunate Tony Daly last Saturday. Daly well taken by then. That's the huge Lily Crap driving forward, the loose head prop. Eckert. That's Herbert. It's Damien Smith. He's got a lot of pace. Big leggy youngster. Well, he's made a lot of ground. Well laid back by Australia. That's Herbert. He did have men outside him. Darren Juney was looking ominous. Down to Charlie Haley, and he hasn't found touch. This is Garrick Morgan on the charge, and a fine piece of covering tackling by Munster, but Australia already showing that these big fellas, Fergus, can really run.
Yeah, it's an interesting exercise for the Australians. This being very much their second team side, and great test for them here. Almost ideal Munster conditions here with a lot of rain falling in Cork today.
At the back for Munster, Ger Earls, a late replacement for Pat O'Hara. That's Terry Kingston, the Munster skipper. It's well taken in the middle by Munster, nicely tidied. Larkin. And he's got that away, well done, Larkin. So good opening line out for the Munster men. And Dan Larkin took that coolly and kicked positively. Back for Australia, Sam Scott-Young. That's Warwick Waugh at the front of the line-out. But the Australians have been penalised. In fact, the Munster team have been penalised. It's a free to the Wallabies. There's the tap. That's Crowley, who played against Leinster last Saturday as a replacement. Oh, that's Troy Coker. Mind you, he's really huge.